Is this the hardest bike race in Cebu? Is this our new annual tradition? So that was me, and there's Luke, my partner for this Danao Grindfest 2025. He just said e-bikers. I'll get to that joke in a bit. Yeah, we joined the Danao Grindfest 2025. We joined the 80-kilometer route. I'll talk to you about the event a little bit more, but here's the start. Alright, the Now City Grindfest 2.0. Two-person team adventure sports tourism bike race. So you can see there's 120 kilometers, an 80-kilometer route, 70-kilometer route, and a 30-kilometer route. I really liked that they had the easier options for the routes as well, because like the 30-kilometer route was really good. If your fitness was not great, like you just bike like on the weekends or twice a week or something like that, the 30-kilometer route was plenty. I was a bit confused with the 80 and 70-kilometer route. I'll get to that next, but there's also the 120-kilometer route. The 120-kilometer route right now for me was probably too much. I don't think I could have done it. Last year, they didn't have 120 kilometers. Last year, they had 100 kilometers, and I did that. And it was really hard, and I suffered a lot. I don't think I am as fit as last year, so there was no way I was doing 120 kilometers this year. So, this brings us to the 80 and the 70-kilometer routes. For me, initially, there was a bit of confusion. Like, to me, the 80 and 70 kilometers, why are they there? Right? Initially. But then I learned that the 80-kilometer route is so much harder than the 70-kilometer route. Here's why. This is what it looks like on Strava, or this is what the route looks like. And if you take a right, that's the 70-kilometer route. And if you take a left, it continues to the 80-kilometer route. The right for the 70 kilometers, that's downhill basically, and very little climbs left after that. The left for the 80 kilometers is also downhill. You go down this little bit, and then you circle that area with that circled area, by the way, was really nice. Lots of off-road, very mountain bike material. I will show you clips from that later on in this video. And then after that, you climb again the downhill that you just did. And it was a really tough climb. I think second hardest climb, I would say, in that whole 80-kilometer course was that climb. So that extra 10 kilometers probably cost me and Luke an extra hour. Right? So I'm happy we chose the 80 kilometers. I feel like it was just enough suffering that you started questioning your life choices, but not too much where you were totally dead. So I was happy choosing the 80-kilometer route. Unfortunately, it turned out that the 80-kilometer route was for EMTB / gravel. So when I saw that, I thought, okay, I guess this is where the gravel category is. Turns out they meant EMTB or e-gravel. Basically, it was the e-bike category. So in our category, spoiler alert, we finished fourth. First was an e-biker, second was an e-biker, well, e-biker pair, third was another e-biker pair, and me and Luke as fourth, as the only people not on e-bikes. So there's only 4 teams in our category. So we just missed the prize money, but there was no way we were overtaking any of those e-bikers. But still, I'm pretty happy. I'm wondering if we could have cracked the top 10 in our age cat. I kind of have a feeling that we could have. So I knew from last year that my favorite part of the race was gonna be this first bit of off-road. And it was my favorite part, but unfortunately, since we started the race early this year at 5 a.m., we started the race at 5 a.m. As you can see, there wasn't really any light out. And also, since I was racing, I wasn't doing a good job uh, keeping my camera pointed front. So my footage from this part is not great. Yeah. Yeah, the night footage for my camera, I just need more light for this to be good footage. So, but this was my one of my favorite parts. I like this because it was off-roady, lots happening, and also there was a lot of people on the trail. And you don't get to really ride with this many people, not and even less likely to race them up trails like this. So I had a lot of fun trying to make sure I didn't get myself into trouble. Not get behind people who were slow, trying to overtake when I could. And on a gravel bike, this definitely was a tricky section, especially against a bunch of mountain bikers, because they didn't have to pick their lines as much. But for me, this section was a lot of fun, and I managed to overtake a whole bunch of people. And to be honest, I did not feel all that tired in this section. Um, but my footage is not great. So I'm just gonna talk about it and leave it at that. But I have a lot more good footage, especially the downhills with the views later on. But before we get to that, a word from our sponsor, Curve Coffee Collaborators. One of the things that I like working with a company like Curve Coffee Collaborators is that they are very friendly to small businesses like mine. Now, I just brewed a batch of cold brew coffee. Here it is. And our shop does not have a great volume of coffee orders. So I usually just buy a couple of bags of their Curve Cold Brew blend, and that's what I use for cold brew coffee. And since I don't order that much, sometimes I get into a situation where they just don't have stock of the cold brew blend. They were able to suggest to me a different blend that works just as well with a slightly different taste. So whenever I run out of the cold brew blend, I order the Tanyag. It's 60% Arabica and 40% Robusta. It's a little bit similar to their cold brew blend, but it has a slightly different taste. So that's what I like about Curve. They are willing to work with small businesses like mine. In fact, they have so much more than just cold brew. Just check out their website at curve.coffee and you can find a lot more coffee related items for you or your small business. Thanks, Curve, for sponsoring the vlog. Just to give you an idea of how hard this Danao City Grindfest is, here's a bunch of the public Strava entries that I saw online. It's like 120 kilometers and about 3 to 4,000 meters of climbing. So that's really hard, really tough. And for the 80 kilometers, I think we did about 2,000 meters of climbing. Here's my Strava entry, just to give you guys a look. So that's what the course is like. It's a lot of climbing. You're gonna hear more about the course because I am gonna talk about what bike I decided to use, and I decided to use my Highlight G7.2 titanium gravel bike. The reason I use the Highlight is it's my lightest gravel bike that can fit my biggest with the biggest tires. I currently have the Kenda Flint Ridge Pros on them, and they're really good tires. If I could do it again though, I would probably use a 45 or a 50 tire. Maybe the Booster Pros, the Booster Pros for, I assume, more traction in the off-road bits. But the Flint Ridge was fine. The other thing that I had on my highlight in terms of the group set was my Shimano GRX. Everything was basically GRX except for the crank set, which was Ultegra, right? So I had an 1142 cassette in the back, which is typical for a little extended 2x11 range for the GRX group sets. The only thing was my Ultegra chainring was a 4634.
Stop, baby.
If I could change something on the bike, and I'll probably definitely do this for next year, it would be much easier climbing gears. Ideally, a 4630 chainring would have been better. Now, I was able to get up pretty much all the climbs except for this one climb that I'll show you later on in the video, where I just decided to walk because I've been there before, and because I didn't have the ability to just spin through, right? So the Danao Grindfest course, as I said, is full of climbs. And it's not just regular climbs. It's climbs with really, really, really steep gradients. And for the most part, if it was like a road climb with a really steep gradient, I can get through with the 34 chainring and the 42 in the back cassette. But over a span of hours, like lots of hours, and multiple double digit in the teens gradients, that is really difficult. And by the 3-hour mark in this race, I was cramping, and in fact I lost count how many times I cramped, because I just realized that that's what happens to my legs if I have to smash them up hills the whole day, right? If I could just spin my way up the hills, that would be better. Unfortunately, I did not have the gearing for that. Aside from that, the bike performed really well. No mechanicals whatsoever, no flats whatsoever. It did really well. I don't know what else to say. I really like that bike. And my current stable of bikes, if there is a gravel race, or in this case a mountain bike race, which, to be honest, I think the better bike for this particular race would be a gravel bike, because while there are very significant off-road sections, and some of the off-road sections were very mountain bike friendly, not gravel friendly at all. Like some of those off-road sections, the rocks were super big, super bumpy. Majority of this race is still climbing on badly cemented roads. And you know, if you get a gravel bike of the same class, if you compare a gravel bike and a mountain bike of the same class, let's say they cost the same amount of money, the gravel bike will probably be lighter, hence you can climb better, climb faster, and I guess you would slow down on the off-road sections. Like the mountain bike was definitely better off-road, but there's so much climbing here that I think the gravel bike is a better choice. Which brings me to like the categories in races like this. In races like this where it's like a mixed terrain race, I feel like you shouldn't put a mountain bike or gravel bike category. You just, put the categories by age, and then that's it. Just let them do the race, and whoever chose the best tool for the race wins. One thing that caused a little controversy in the beginning of the race, though, is that apparently you were required to have a rear light and a front light for the ones who started at 4 and 5 a.m. And then you were also supposed to wear gloves. if you did have any of those, you would not be allowed to race. Fortunately, they got rid of that gloves requirement, but they still required the lights. And admittedly, I forgot to bring a front light. I had a rear light. I forgot to bring a front light. I got lucky because Kenneth, my mechanic in Villain Cycles, he was also joining. He did a 30-kilometer route, which, by the way, they finished second runner-up. Check out his award. And so I got lucky with my front light. Admittedly, I forgot it. But they required this, and it was not. I think they announced it on a Facebook post, and a very important announcement like that shouldn't be left on a Facebook post. It should be like part of the registration form or something. If it was part of the registration form, I did not see it, admittedly, and a whole bunch of other people did not see it. So they could have done that better. But otherwise, great race, great route, very well organized. So many people were there, and I'll show you later on. It felt really cool being escorted by marshals and even like a police siren. You'll see. This is a section where a lot of people climbed their bike. I managed to get up like 75% of the way. Then I kind of just slipped and ran. Well, I kind of slipped and just lost control of the bike. So I could get up it. I've gone up this climb before, but for today it didn't happen.
Hah? Bali yang buka. Oh. Sangnya di naka sikar bukat. Uy. Oh.
After a lot of off-road, then we got through this like rolling section where it was pretty good views, pretty good. We weren't pushing it super fast yet. There's a long flat section right here, and I feel like Luke was still playing it safe. He didn't want to go too fast. I was raring to go. Like, I don't mind suffering towards the end, which I did. But here was the flat part. So this is the start of the first major long climb. Luke and I reconned this about 2 weeks prior to the event, so I knew what was coming. And to be honest, I thought I would get dropped by a lot of the guys, but to my surprise, I overtook a bunch of them, and I don't know, maybe I was expending too much energy, but at the time, it did not feel like I was. I felt like I was going tempo through most of the parts that weren't too steep, and when it did get steep, I had no choice anyway but to hit threshold. But I was not, I was nose breathing. I didn't feel like I was expending too much energy, and I was pretty happy with this. I was pretty happy. I was feeling really strong at this part of the race. Here's a couple of highlights from the climb. And of course, you can't have a climb without a downhill. This particular downhill was full of nice little views, and it felt really good. Felt really nice to go downhill, have this like long rest after that climb. I'm not sure how long I did that climb for. I think I have it. There's a segment. I think it's a segment in Strava. I'll just put it on the screen. And after that climb, this long downhill, which eventually became pouring rain section downhill. So we were bombing the downhill, and once it was like this, pouring rain, we were being a little bit more cautious, especially since we were going through like a town area where there was a lot more people. I feel like this bit of rain affected my race in such a way. I'll talk about it a little bit more later on, but it affected my race because it effectively soaked my tires. So the Magine computer was really useful. I made sure to turn on the Climb Pro feature. I don't really know what it's called, but basically you can see the climbs that are out there, and there's a lot of steep climbs.
No traction on the very steep stuff. Wonderful. Slipped on the slippery cement, but also I remember this part from last year. It was super tough.
And on this section, I knew it was coming, so I decided to walk. I did not have the gears to grind up this section with reasonable rest. So if I bike through this section, I would have tired myself out super quickly. So this part, it got a little bit flat again. Luke fortunately waited for me. I don't know, after pushing my bike, my back hurt a little bit, but as soon as I got back on my bike, I felt my legs, my inner thighs start to twitch a little bit. So that was tough. Here, we're on the camera of Luke, and he kind of almost fell. So anyway, after that really tough off-road climb, that was the left turn that I was talking about. That was downhill, and then this is that nice little off-road loop that's very, very mountain bikey, and I had a lot of fun doing this section on my gravel bike. I'm not sure it's clear in the footage, but these are pretty big rocks with no clear path for bikes like mine. So I'm happy Luke decided to shoot it, and here it is in almost its entirety.
In Portland, Ohio. Portland, Danao, bitaw. Yeah. You're strong, huh?
Suffering a little bit. I am like, it feels like my legs are about to cramp. So I'm slowing down. Luke is able to stay in front of me. Can't really keep up with them in the climbs. So I'm just trying to go slow, try not to cramp, just try to make it back reasonably in one piece.
At this point, I was feeling it a little bit after that slightly downhill mountain bike section. We had to climb a little bit of off-road. And my legs are feeling it. You can see it in my
I
face.
feel like I'm almost cramping. I'm just trying to like manage the muscle group.
And then on this bit, this was that climb that I was dreading. This might have been the second hardest climb in the whole route for the 80 kilometer. So at this point, I was suffering. I couldn't keep up with Luke, and he was probably slowing down for me.
Where's the good gear? Where is it?
I was trying not to cramp, but I was definitely cramping in sections of this climb. So something I noticed about me in this race is that when I have to grind up a really steep hill, it usually is better for me to stand. If I can't get my cadence to go fast enough, I'm better off standing. And if I can't stand, that's when there's a lot of strain on my inner thigh muscles, and that is, I feel like, one of the biggest reasons of why I ended up cramping a lot. Alright, so we got up that climb, and this is the downhill right after that climb. And at this point, I don't know, man, Luke was flying. He was able to get a gap at some point on this little downhill, and I just couldn't keep up with him. He was flying.
Man, Luke was flying. Nice, buddy, you're flying.
Yeah, downhills, man. Downhills, rapid.
There you go.
Huh? Yeah, they're the real birds, but
I'm not gonna lie, man. It was pretty cool that Luke also had a camera, because I don't see a lot of footage of myself on the bike. At least not like this. And at least with this one, he's like closer. Anyway, you heard the motorcycle beeping. There's actually a motorcycle behind us. He's gonna overtake right about here. And he's actually a marshal. He's actually the marshal. I saw him kick the dog. Sort of. He's actually a marshal. He's been following us around and making sure that people hear us coming. That was pretty cool, to be honest, man. That was pretty cool. It's a nice little section that I liked here. A little off-road section. And then I was feeling bad again going up this very short, very steep climb. Yeah, every time the hill became really steep, I started to suffer a little bit. But it was weird because when it was on the flat, I could go relatively fast, reasonably fast. But every time there was like a really steep bit, legs would suffer. I suffered so much that I wanted an extended rest with 2 Cokes in this bit.
short rest.
Right after resting, there was one more climb where I cramped again. I cramped a bunch. I did not bother shooting it because it was slow. I was suffering. But then, it was pretty flat all the way back to the finish line, and we got a police escort, which was really cool. And yeah, that was the race, man. Like I said, really fun. I was really lucky to have Luke as a partner. It was cool because we got to basically be together the whole race. In a way, that's what's cool about doing these epics. You get to do it with a partner. But admittedly, that's also one of the things that's kind of difficult with the epics as well, is that you have to get a partner, and sometimes your partner is so much stronger than you, which was the case last year, where Mark was my partner and he left me after every climb. I mean, not leave me, like he was waiting up every climb, but yeah, I was definitely not in his league. And Luke and I were much closer in terms of fitness. So yeah, that was cool, man. So thanks, Luke. Thanks for the footage. Thanks for being a partner in this race. It was cool to race it with you, man. Maybe we should start training for next year. What do you think? Maybe hit the age cats better. Although I'm not sure I'm in the same age category as Luke. He might actually be in a younger category than me. But should be good. Alright. That's it. If you enjoyed this video, there'll be more soon. Ciao.
We got an escort and everything! Pero second escort na ni Luke.
Marjon. Atis Marjon. Atis Marjon. Kabaho James.
Okay, thank you
Kabaho James.
Not bad.
Kabaho James.